What's up everyone, and welcome back to Top 5 Central. Everyone wants to be rich without working 12 hours a day, and the opportunities are out there. When you want to make that kind of money, you have to take risks, which is what so many people do when it comes to buying storage units. Is the painting or the safe you see in the storage unit worth it? Well, let's find out in our list of 5 storage units people massively regretted buying. Don't forget to leave a like if you want to find $10,000 in a storage unit you want to buy, and subscribe for good luck. Let's get into it. Number 5. Now everybody knows that when you buy a storage unit, you're taking a risk, and not all risks pay off the way you want them to. This guy definitely got some unique stuff that got him on the news, which is kind of cool I guess, but he also ended up with a unit full of serial stalker level creepy items.
News made headlines for escaping a mental institution. Tonight, Madonna Stalker is getting new attention. CBS 2's Hazel Sanchez takes us inside the storage locker filled with some alarming memorabilia.
That's a lot of information, so let's break down what this lucky buyer got. First off, there was a mannequin with the head ripped off and all of its clothes were missing, which I really don't want to think about too much. Then there's the huge collection of knives, which includes blades of all shapes and sizes and in all conditions. Lastly, there's also the framed posters of Madonna, one of which also has a picture of a Madonna tattoo glued inside. Obviously, that's some really weird stuff, but if you put the pieces together, then it really starts to make sense. It turns out this buyer had accidentally bought a unit that used to belong to Madonna's most famous stalker, who had fallen behind on paying his rent on the container. Not only that, but he went to prison for threatening to kill Madonna if she didn't agree to be with him, which makes this whole thing extra creepy, don't you think?
I didn't know actually until I got into the office to actually pay for the locker, and that's when they told me that, that unit belongs to Madonna Stalker.
The locker was filled with the singer's pictures and even a photo of Hoskins with a tattoo of Madonna on his stomach. Hoskins once threatened to slash Madonna's throat if she didn't accept his advances. He served 10 years in prison for stalking her.
Number 4. So here's the thing, this is another story where if I found an item like this, I would definitely think I was in some sort of horror movie. Don't worry though, because this story has a happy ending, and there's actually nothing criminal about it surprisingly. Basically, this guy went to a storage container auction and watched as every piece was sold off separately, and a smoker grill at the back caught his eye. It obviously seemed like a pretty cheap deal, so he bought it and couldn't wait to get it home so he could test it for himself. Here's where things get weird, because when he opened up the grill, there was something already inside of it. I mean, at first he's assuming it's some kind of slab of meat wrapped up in paper, but when he looked closer, he realized it was something way freakier. It was a human foot. A human foot with a chunk of leg attached was in the smoker. Like I said, at first the new owner was super freaked out and rang the police in case there had been a murder and he had found part of a body. The actual story is stranger. The old owner had his leg amputated and decided the grill was the perfect place to keep it. I'm gonna be honest with you though, I'm not sure that I, exactly agree with that. Especially if, I don't know, you can't afford to, pay the bill so someone else has to discover it, what? Number 3. Storage unit buying might seem like an odd hobby, but when there's a chance to actually make a lot of money if you're lucky, that's when a lot of the buyers come in. I mean, this guy must have thought he had hit the jackpot at first, but unfortunately, things didn't work out the way he had planned. Here's the story. The first ever Superman comic is the most expensive and rare comic in the world, and one famous person who owned a copy was Nicolas Cage. Unfortunately, his copy was stolen from his home and lost, and despite a police investigation, it was never found. Then, years later, the buyer of a storage unit found a mint condition copy and sent it to a comics expert to get it valued exactly. Up until now, this story has already been kinda crazy, but this is where things get really wild. Not only did the expert know how much the copy was exactly worth, but they recognized it as the exact copy they had sold it to Nick Cage in the first place. The poor guy had to give the copy back since it was technically stolen property, but the good news is he was compensated, just not as much as the priceless comic was actually worth.
Collectibles expert Mark Valello says when a man brought it into a Simi Valley warehouse a few weeks ago, he knew it was valuable. Only about 9 exist in this condition, and this particular copy was stolen from actor Nicolas Cage.
Sometimes it's, story sounds too good to be true. and therefore there was, and it was a stolen book.
That's when the LAPD's art theft detail got involved, setting up an undercover operation where they posed as comic book buyers.
Number 2. Here's a question. Have you ever found yourself in a bad situation and tried to think of like a good excuse to get out of it? Well, this person definitely did that, and their excuse was good enough, or at least creepy enough to get the police involved. Basically, this person was behind on the rent for their storage unit, and so the business owner said they were going to sell everything inside to make up for their debt. The owner really didn't want them to do it, which is pretty normal if you ask me, but the reason for why they shouldn't was, well, unique. So what's inside? Well, the owner's dead grandma was living in that storage unit. Yeah, you heard me right. The owner's mother had put the grandma's coffin in there, and then she had also died. That left the poor granddaughter to deal with a seriously weird situation, which it turns out is also an illegal one. Who knew?
They had a tenant that was behind on their rent, and they had given them all the proper notice and warning and told them that they were going to go into the unit and then sell it at auction.
That's when the tenant, who reportedly was having money problems, contacted them.
She said, "You can't sell my stuff at auction. My grandmother is in that storage unit."
Authorities say managers went in the unit, saw this casket, and called police. Officials tell us the coffin had been inside since 1995.
Here's our honorable mention. Most people who rent out storage units are just normal people who need a little extra space, but you do sometimes get like renters who are a little less, well, normal. I mean, this unit wasn't examined by an excited buyer or the host of Storage Wars. It was actually examined by police, and the reason why is, well, pretty obvious. Like, from top to bottom, the whole unit was filled with sports cars. Well, bits of sports cars at least. There were chopped up brakes and steering wheels from everything from Ferraris to Audis, and all of them matched up with descriptions to stolen cars lost from the area. That was only the beginning too, since other containers were backed with fake alcohol and tobacco, which altogether was worth over $4 million. Not a bad price tag, but unfortunately the cops weren't there to make a profit. They were there to try and track down whoever owned the units in the first place. Okay, before we get to number 1, this second honorable mention will give you goosebumps. There have been some pretty creepy and illegal things on this list so far, but I've got to be honest with you guys. I think this might be the worst one yet. This father and son bought a storage unit to explore after the owner passed away, which all seems pretty harmless as far as I'm concerned. Problem is, what was inside the unit was anything but harmless, since it included 3 yellow plastic bags filled with human bones. That's right, the man had been hiding human remains in his unit, but it gets even worse than that. It turns out the man was a suspect in his wife's murder investigation, who disappeared while traveling to meet her sister, but was never found. Her body was never discovered. A quick analysis showed the bones belonged to a woman and had also been buried and dug up. A sure sign that the father and son were hoping to find valuables, but found the key to a criminal investigation instead. Number 1. Now, the thing about this story is that nobody's quite sure if it's illegal, but there's no ignoring the fact that it's definitely super creepy. I mean, this storage unit was owned by a doctor and medical examiner who said he used it to keep furniture, but he actually used it to store something way more nightmarish. What was it exactly? Well, body parts. Like, the new owner cracked open the door to the unit and immediately smelled something weird, which turned out to be the chemicals he used to preserve the body parts. There were hearts, brains, and other tissue samples, all from people he had carried out autopsies on in his career. That's already the kind of horror story that'll keep you up at night, but it gets even weirder, because he wasn't even storing the parts correctly. He was keeping human hearts and brains in sippy cups and Tupperware filled with formaldehyde, and although that sounds like something a serial killer might do, it might not technically actually be illegal. And there's our video on the top 5 storage units people regret buying. Don't feel guilty if you guys want to keep on binge watching. Click on screen now if you want to check out 5 insanely famous Olympic athletes who got exposed for cheating and are banned for life. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe so you see whenever we upload a video. With all that said, thank you for watching and keep it here on Top 5 Central.